I thought I knew every corner of my own house until my 7-year-old daughter Maya told me about the other mom who locked her in our basement. What I found down there that morning changed everything I believed about safety, about trust, and about the monsters that can hide in plain sight. My name is Jessica Parker, and I'm a 34-year-old single mom living in what I thought was the perfect suburban neighborhood in Ohio. For 3 years, ever since my divorce from Maya's father, it's just been the two of us in our cozy 2-story colonial home on Maple Street. I work as a dental hygienist at a family practice downtown, and Maya is this incredible, bright second grader who lights up every room she enters. She's got these huge brown eyes and this wild curly hair that never stays in ponytails, no matter how many clips I use. Maya has always been what people call an old soul. While other kids her age are still afraid of imaginary monsters under the bed, Maya approaches the world with this logical, matter-of-fact attitude that sometimes catches adults off guard. She doesn't make up stories for attention or create elaborate fantasies like some kids do. When Maya tells you something, you can bank on it being true. That's exactly why what happened that Saturday morning in October shook me to my core. The morning started like any other weekend day in the Parker household. I was standing at our kitchen counter in my favorite oversized sweater and yoga pants, making Maya's beloved blueberry pancakes from scratch. The autumn sunlight was streaming through our yellow gingham curtains, casting this warm, golden glow across our breakfast nook. The coffee maker was gurgling away, filling the air with that rich aroma that signals the start of a lazy Saturday. I had my phone propped against the fruit bowl, catching up on messages from my mom group about the upcoming Halloween party at Maya's school. Everything felt perfectly normal, perfectly safe. Our house had become our sanctuary over the past 3 years. After the chaos and heartbreak of my divorce, this place represented stability and new beginnings. I'd painted Maya's room her favorite shade of purple, hung family photos throughout the hallway, and even started dating again. My boyfriend Ryan, who works construction, had been staying over occasionally, and for the first time since my marriage ended, I felt like we were building something that looked like a real family. Maya usually bounds down the stairs around 8 in the morning on weekends, wearing whatever princess or unicorn pajamas she'd picked out the night before, her hair a beautiful mess and her stuffed bunny Coco tucked under one arm. She'd climb onto her favorite kitchen stool, the blue one with the slightly wobbly leg that I keep meaning to fix, and chatter about her dreams or plans for the day while I finish cooking. But this particular morning, something was different. When Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, she wasn't bouncing or chattering. Instead, she moved slowly, almost hesitantly, clutching Coco against her chest with both arms. Her usually bright eyes looked tired, like she'd been awake for hours, and there were faint shadows underneath them that I'd never noticed before. Her unicorn pajamas, which had been clean and bright when I tucked her in the night before, had strange dark smudges on the knees, and I could see a small tear near the left ankle that definitely hadn't been there at bedtime. The sight of her made my heart skip just slightly, the way it does when something feels off but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. As a single mom, you develop this internal radar for when things aren't quite right with your child, and every instinct I had was suddenly on high alert. The past 3 years had been a journey of rebuilding that I never expected to navigate alone. When my marriage to David fell apart, I thought my world was ending. The man I'd planned to grow old with had decided our family wasn't enough anymore, leaving Maya and me to pick up the pieces of what felt like a shattered life. Those first few months were brutal. I remember crying in grocery store aisles when Maya wasn't looking, wondering how I was going to raise this incredible little human by myself while keeping my own head above water. But somehow we not only survived, we thrived. Our little house on Maple Street became more than just a place to live after the divorce was finalized. It became our fortress, our safe haven, our fresh start. I'd spent countless weekends painting walls, hanging pictures, and creating spaces that felt uniquely ours. Maya's bedroom became a purple paradise, complete with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a reading nook by the window where she'd spend hours with her books. My own bedroom, once shared with someone who made me feel invisible, became a sanctuary decorated in soft blues and whites that made me feel peaceful every time I walked in. Work at the dental practice had become more than just a paycheck. Dr. Morrison and the rest of the staff treated Maya and me like family, always asking about her school events and making sure I could adjust my schedule for parent-teacher conferences or sick days. Maya loved coming to the office after school sometimes, charming all the patients with her gap-toothed smile and endless questions about teeth. She'd even announced last month that she wanted to be a dentist, just like Dr. Morrison when she grew up, which made my heart swell with pride. Maya was flourishing at Lincoln Elementary. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, constantly praised her reading abilities and mathematical reasoning skills during our conferences. Maya had this natural curiosity about everything around her, from why leaves change colors to how airplanes stay in the sky. She made friends easily, but also enjoyed her own company, perfectly content to build elaborate structures with her blocks or create detailed drawings of our neighborhood. Unlike many kids her age who lived in fantasy worlds populated by imaginary friends, Maya was remarkably grounded in reality. She approached life with a logical mindset that sometimes amazed the adults around her. 6 months ago, I'd started dating again, something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. Ryan Martinez entered our lives through the most ordinary circumstances. He'd been hired to repair our back deck after a particularly harsh winter had left several boards loose and dangerous. What started as professional small talk over coffee while he worked turned into longer conversations about everything from our favorite movies to our biggest fears. Ryan was patient, kind, and most importantly, he understood that Maya and I were a package deal. He'd been staying over on Tuesday and Friday nights for the past 2 months, something Maya had adjusted to with surprising ease. She liked Ryan's terrible dad jokes and the way he actually listened when she explained her latest school projects. He'd even started teaching her basic woodworking skills in our garage, showing her how to sand pieces of scrap wood until they were smooth as glass. For the first time since my divorce, I was beginning to believe that our little family of 2 might successfully become a family of 3. Our Saturday morning routine had evolved into something sacred. Maya typically slept until 8, giving me precious quiet time to drink my first cup of coffee in peace while planning our weekend adventures. She'd appear in whatever pajamas had captured her imagination the night before, usually carrying Coco, the brown stuffed bunny she'd had since she was 2. Coco had been through everything with Maya, from her first day of kindergarten to the nights she'd cried about missing her daddy. That bunny was more than a toy. It was her constant companion and comfort object. Maya would climb onto her designated stool at our kitchen island, the blue one with the slightly loose leg that wobbled just enough to make her giggle, but not enough to be dangerous. While I cooked, she'd tell me about her dreams from the night before or make elaborate plans for how we'd spend our day. Sometimes we'd go to the park, other times we'd have movie marathons in our pajamas, and occasionally we'd drive to my sister's house across town where Maya could play with her cousins. The kitchen itself had become the heart of our home. I'd painted the walls a warm yellow that made even cloudy days feel sunny, and Maya had helped me choose the gingham curtains that framed our window overlooking the backyard. Photos of our adventures covered the refrigerator, creating a collage of memories that told the story of our new life together. This particular Saturday morning started exactly like hundreds of others before it, with sunlight streaming through those yellow curtains and the promise of a peaceful weekend ahead of us. "Good morning, sunshine. Ready for pancakes?" I called out cheerfully as Maya shuffled into the kitchen, trying to inject my usual Saturday morning energy into my voice despite the concern I felt seeing her tired appearance. Maya climbed onto her familiar blue stool with none of her typical enthusiasm. Instead of her usual animated chatter about dreams or weekend plans, she sat quietly for a moment, adjusting Coco in her lap. Then she looked directly at me with an expression I'd never seen before, serious and troubled in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Mom, why did you lock me in the basement last night?" The spatula I was holding froze mid-flip above the pan. The words hit me like a physical blow, so unexpected and jarring that for a moment I wondered if I'd heard her correctly. I turned to face her fully, searching her face for any sign that this was some kind of joke or game, but Maya's expression remained completely serious. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. "You locked me in the basement," Maya repeated, her tone matter-of-fact but with an undertone of hurt that broke my heart. "It was dark and cold, and I called for you, but you wouldn't let me out. I banged on the door and yelled your name, but you just told me to be quiet." My mind reeled as I tried to process what she was saying. I set the spatula down with shaking hands and moved to kneel in front of her, bringing myself to her eye level. Her small face was pale, and those dark circles under her eyes suddenly seemed much more pronounced. "Maya, honey, you slept in your own bed all night," I said gently, reaching out to smooth her messy curls. "I checked on you at 11 o'clock like I always do, and you were sound asleep under your purple comforter. You had Coco with you, and you were breathing so peacefully." Maya shook her head with a firmness that sent chills down my spine. "No, Mom, the other mom did it. She looks just like you, but her eyes are different. They're empty, like a doll's eyes. She said I was being too loud upstairs and needed to learn to be quiet." "The other mom?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maya, what do you mean by the other mom?" "She has your face and your hair, but she's not you," Maya explained with the kind of certainty that only children possess. When I asked her why she was being mean, she smiled, but it wasn't your smile. It was scary. She said she was teaching me to behave better than you do. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. Maya had never been a child prone to nightmares or elaborate fantasies. She was practical, grounded, the kind of kid who explained away scary movies by pointing out the special effects. For her to be describing something this detailed and disturbing was completely out of character. "Sweetheart, I think you might have had a very realistic dream," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and reassuring. Sometimes dreams can feel so real that we think they actually happened. But even as I spoke, I was noticing details that made my rational explanation feel hollow. Maya's pajama bottoms had dust on the knees, gray smudges that definitely hadn't been there when I'd helped her into them the night before. There was a small tear near the hem of her left pant leg, the fabric pulled in a way that suggested it had caught on something rough. Most disturbing of all, when I looked down at Maya's bare feet, I could see traces of the distinctive red clay dust that accumulated in our unfinished basement. It was a specific color and texture that came from the old foundation, nothing like the regular dirt from our backyard or the clean floors of our house. That dust was only found in one place, and Maya had no reason to have been down there. "Look at my feet, Mom," Maya said, noticing where my gaze had fallen. "That's from when she made me sit on the cold floor. She said if I was going to act like a baby, I could sit in the dark like one." I examined her feet more closely, my heart pounding. The red dust was definitely there, embedded under her toenails and between her toes. It was the same dust I'd complained about to Ryan just last week when he'd gone down to check on a strange noise we'd heard from the basement. "Maya, I need you to tell me everything you remember about last night," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Start from when you went to bed and tell me every single detail you can remember." Maya's grip on Coco tightened as she began to speak, and with each word she said, the safe, secure world I'd built for us started crumbling around me. Maya's detailed account of the night before sent ice through my veins. She described being woken up by someone who looked exactly like me, standing in her bedroom doorway around midnight. The woman had used my voice to tell Maya to come downstairs quietly, that there was something special to show her in the basement. When Maya hesitated, confused about why I would want her to go to the scary basement in the middle of the night, the woman's expression had changed completely. She grabbed my arm really tight, Mom. "It hurt," Maya said, pulling up her pajama sleeve to reveal faint red marks that looked suspiciously like finger impressions on her small bicep. She said I was being disobedient and needed to learn respect. That's when I knew it wasn't really you because you never grabbed me like that. My mind raced between desperate attempts at logical explanations and the growing horror that something unthinkable had happened in my own home. Sleepwalking couldn't explain the physical evidence. A dream couldn't leave red clay dust on Maya's feet or create those marks on her arm. The rational part of my brain kept insisting there had to be a reasonable explanation, but every maternal instinct I possessed was screaming that something was terribly, dangerously wrong. I thought back to the past few weeks, searching for anything unusual I might have dismissed. There had been strange sounds at night that I'd attributed to our old house settling. Twice I'd found the back door unlocked in the morning when I was certain I'd secured it the night before. Last Tuesday, I'd noticed one of Maya's hair ribbons on the kitchen counter when I was sure she'd worn it to bed. Ryan had even mentioned that some of his tools in the basement seemed to have been moved, but we'd laughed it off, assuming Maya had been exploring when we weren't watching. Now, those seemingly innocent occurrences took on a sinister new meaning. Someone had been in our house. Someone had been watching us, learning our routines, and worst of all, someone had terrified my daughter while I slept peacefully upstairs, completely unaware. "Maya, I need you to stay right here in the kitchen with your tablet while Mommy checks something downstairs," I said, trying to project calm while my heart hammered against my ribs. "Can you do that for me? Don't leave this room for any reason." Maya's eyes widened with fear. "Don't go down there, Mom. She might still be there. What if she hurts you like she hurt me?" "I'm going to be very careful, I promise," I said, kissing the top of her head. "But I need to see what's down there. If someone has been in our house, we need to know." I retrieved my phone from the counter, making sure it was fully charged and ready to call 911 at a moment's notice. The baseball bat Ryan had left by the back door after our last game of catch with Maya suddenly seemed like divine providence. I gripped it tightly, the aluminum handle cold and reassuring in my sweaty palms. As I approached the basement door, my body was already betraying my fear. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The deadbolt on the basement door, which I never used because it seemed unnecessary in our safe neighborhood, was turned to the locked position from the outside. The small brass key that usually hung on a hook beside the doorframe was missing. Someone had definitely locked Maya in the basement. This wasn't a nightmare or a child's overactive imagination. This was real, and it had happened in my home while I slept 20 feet away. I slowly turned the deadbolt and opened the door. The familiar creak of the hinges seemed amplified in the tense silence. Our basement wasn't fully finished, just a concrete floor with exposed ceiling beams and basic lighting. Ryan's tools were scattered on a workbench along one wall, and boxes of holiday decorations and old furniture filled most of the available space. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound strong. "Is someone down here?" The silence felt oppressive, but I forced myself to descend the wooden steps. Each creak seemed to announce my presence to whoever might be hiding in the shadows. I held my phone's flashlight in one hand and gripped the baseball bat with the other, scanning every corner and crevice where someone could potentially hide. The basement appeared exactly as I remembered it, but something felt different. There was a sense of disturbance in the air, as if the space had been occupied recently. I could smell something unfamiliar, a scent that didn't belong to our household cleaning supplies or Ryan's woodworking projects. As I moved deeper into the basement, toward the far corner where the furnace hummed quietly, I discovered something that would haunt me forever. Behind the furnace, in the darkest corner of our basement where Maya's cries would have been completely muffled, I discovered a scene that made my legs nearly give out beneath me. Someone had created a makeshift living space using items stolen from throughout our house. Maya's favorite pillow, the one with the unicorn print that she'd been asking about for days, lay on a thin camping mattress I'd never seen before. Next to it sat a small battery-powered lantern, a plastic water bottle, and a Ziploc bag containing what looked like crackers and granola bars. But it was the composition notebook lying open beside the pillow that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. The handwriting inside looked exactly like my own, so perfectly mimicked that for a moment I wondered if I was losing my mind. Page after page contained detailed observations about our daily routines, written with the precision of someone conducting surveillance. Maya goes to bed at 8:30 p.m. Jessica checks on her at 11 p.m. sharp, then goes to her own room. House is completely quiet by 11:30 p.m. Read one entry dated 3 weeks ago. Jessica leaves for work at 8:15 a.m., returns at 5:30 p.m. Maya takes the school bus, arrives home at 3:45 p.m. on weekdays. Spare house key hidden under the garden gnome by the back steps. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages, each entry more invasive than the last. Ryan stays Tuesday and Friday nights. He parks in the driveway and uses the front door. Jessica is happier when he's here, laughs more, touches her hair when she talks to him. Maya calls him almost dad when she thinks Jessica can't hear. Jessica's bedroom window lock has been broken for months, mentioned it to Ryan last week, but he hasn't fixed it yet. The observations weren't just about our schedules. They included intimate details about our personalities, our relationships, our vulnerabilities. Maya is afraid of thunderstorms, but too proud to admit it. Jessica always checks the locks twice before bed when Ryan isn't there. Jessica cries in the shower on Sundays, probably thinking about her ex-husband. Maya has nightmares about her father leaving and sometimes calls out for him in her sleep. As I read, I heard the basement door close upstairs with a soft click, followed by the unmistakable sound of the deadbolt turning. My heart stopped as footsteps crossed the kitchen floor above my head. Then I heard Maya's voice, bright and relieved, calling out, "Other Mom, you're back!" I was getting scared because regular Mom went downstairs and I wasn't supposed to follow her. What came next made every cell in my body freeze with terror. I heard my own voice responding from upstairs. "I told you to stay quiet, Maya. Now come here and let me explain why your mother had to go away for a while." The voice was perfect, absolutely identical to my own speech patterns, intonation, even the slight catch I get when I'm trying to remain calm while dealing with something stressful. If I hadn't been standing in the basement holding this evidence, I would have sworn I was hearing a recording of myself speaking. I fumbled for my phone with trembling fingers, but there was no signal in the basement. The thick concrete walls that had always made our house feel secure were now trapping me like a tomb. I could hear Maya upstairs, her voice getting more confused and frightened as she tried to understand why there were suddenly two versions of her mother. "But where did my real mom go?" Maya asked, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. "She said she was just checking something. She promised she'd be right back." "Your real mom had to leave because she wasn't taking good enough care of you," came my voice again, calm and authoritative, in a way that made my skin crawl. "But don't worry, sweetheart. I'm going to take much better care of you than she ever did. We're going to be a perfect family, just you and me." The woman upstairs had been studying us for weeks, maybe months, learning not just our routines, but our emotional dynamics. She knew exactly how Maya would react to different situations, exactly what words would comfort or confuse her. The notebook contained psychological profiles that showed she understood our family better than some of our closest friends did. I realized with growing horror that this wasn't a random break-in or a crime of opportunity. This was a calculated, long-term plan to steal our entire life. The woman upstairs wasn't just pretending to be me for Maya's benefit in this moment. She was preparing to replace me permanently, and she'd been practicing for weeks to make sure she could do it flawlessly. Maya's voice drifted down through the floorboards, small and uncertain. "You smell different than my real mom, and your hands are colder." The response chilled me to the bone. "You'll get used to the differences, Maya. Soon you won't even remember there was ever another mom." I knew I had seconds, maybe minutes, before this woman upstairs convinced Maya to leave with her or did something even worse. The basement window near Ryan's workbench was small and high up the wall, but it was my only escape route. Using a paint can as a step stool, I managed to reach the latch. The window hadn't been opened in years, and the mechanism was rusted and stubborn. Above me, I could hear the woman who sounded exactly like me talking to Maya in increasingly urgent tones. "We need to go on a little trip, sweetheart, just you and me. Won't that be fun?" Maya's responses were becoming more hesitant and confused, her natural intuition telling her something was very wrong even though she couldn't understand what. I grabbed a hammer from Ryan's tool collection and carefully broke the window glass, wrapping my hands in an old towel to avoid the worst of the cuts. Even so, I felt sharp edges slice through the fabric and into my arms as I pulled myself through the narrow opening. The physical pain was nothing compared to the terror of knowing a stranger had my daughter upstairs and was planning to take her away from me forever. I dropped to the ground outside and ran to our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson's house, pounding on her door while dialing 911 with bloody fingers. "Someone is in my house with my daughter," I gasped to the dispatcher. "She's pretending to be me. My little girl doesn't know she's in danger." The police response was swift and professional. Within minutes, our quiet street was filled with squad cars, their red and blue lights painting the morning in surreal colors. Officers surrounded the house while I provided them with every detail I could remember about the basement setup and what I'd overheard. When they entered through the front door, they found Maya sitting at our kitchen table with a woman who looked so much like me that even the officers did a double take. The imposter had been calmly making Maya breakfast, acting for all the world like a normal mother on a normal Saturday morning. If not for the evidence in the basement and my frantic 911 call, the scene would have appeared completely innocent. The woman's name was Kelly Brooks, and her story unfolded like something from a psychological thriller. She had lost her own 7-year-old daughter, Lily, in a bitter custody battle 8 months earlier. Unable to cope with the loss, Kelly had become obsessed with finding a replacement family that matched what she'd lost. She'd chosen us because Maya was the same age as Lily, and because I bore a striking physical resemblance to Kelly herself. For over 6 weeks, Kelly had been living partially in our house, entering through my broken bedroom window whenever we were away. She'd been studying our routines, practicing my voice and mannerisms, even watching through our windows to observe how Maya and I interacted. The broken window lock that I'd mentioned casually to Ryan had become her primary entry point. Kelly had been preparing for what she called the transition. Her plan was to gradually replace me in Maya's life, starting with confusing incidents like the basement imprisonment. She intended to make Maya question her own memories and perceptions until the little girl couldn't distinguish between her real mother and her replacement. Eventually, Kelly planned to make me disappear entirely and assume my identity permanently. The investigation revealed that Kelly had been researching identity theft and had already begun the process of duplicating my important documents. She'd taken photographs of my driver's license, credit cards, and even Maya's birth certificate. In her apartment across town, police found detailed floor plans of our house, copies of Maya's school schedule, and hundreds of photos of us taken without our knowledge. The psychological evaluation determined that Kelly suffered from a severe delusional disorder triggered by the loss of her daughter. She genuinely believed that she could become me, and that Maya would be better off with her as a mother. In her mind, she wasn't stealing our life. She was improving it. Maya required months of therapy to process what had happened. For weeks afterward, she would ask me questions only the real me would know the answers to. Testing to make sure I was actually her mother. She'd check my hands to ensure they were warm, smell my perfume to confirm it was the right scent, and ask me to sing the special lullaby I'd made up just for her. Gradually, with professional help and enormous amounts of patience, she began to trust again. 6 months later, we moved to a new house with a comprehensive security system and unbreakable window locks. Maya still sleeps with Coco, but now she also has a special whistle that connects directly to our security company. She's learned that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look exactly like the people we trust. This experience taught me that a mother's instinct should never ignore a child's fears, no matter how impossible their story might seem. Maya's courage in telling me the truth, despite knowing it sounded unbelievable, ultimately saved both our lives. If this story resonated with you, please share it with other parents who need to hear this message. Comment below with your own thoughts about home security and trusting our children's voices. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that matter.